Let's start our list with Sentry's base form. Sentry is an incredibly powerful superhero, often referred to as Marvel's Superman. But he's got some abilities that really set him apart from the Man of Steel. What makes Sentry especially interesting is the way he was introduced in the comics back in 2000. He was written as if he had always been a part of the Marvel Universe, like some long-lost legend. To sell the idea, the writers even came up with a fictional history of Sentry within the Marvel world, and a made-up real-world publication history. According to that backstory, way back in the 60s, Stan Lee and a fictional artist named Artie Rosen supposedly created a Superman-like hero called the Sentry, but the project was shelved. The character was forgotten, and he never made it to print. Fast forward to 1999, after Rosen's death, when his old sketches were rediscovered, and suddenly the Sentry returned to the comics. In his debut miniseries, we learned that Sentry's real name is Robert Reynolds, a middle-aged overweight man who used to be a massively powerful superhero. His powers came from a special serum that gave him the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. But something happened in Robert's past that made him give up being a superhero. He remembers all the other Marvel heroes, but strangely none of them remember him. Eventually, we find out why. The entire world had forgotten about the Sentry because of an incident that we'll get into later. When one of his greatest enemies returns, Robert tries to bring himself and his past back into the light, hoping to take up the mantle of a hero again. But things take a darker turn. Later in the story, we find out that Sentry's origin is way more twisted than it first seemed. The serum that gave Robert his powers was actually an attempt to recreate Captain America's super soldier serum, except this version was 1,000 times more potent. Robert, who was a drug addict at the time, broke into a lab and stole the serum, thinking it was some kind of experimental drug. After he took it, he gained unimaginable power. The professor who made the serum was so horrified by what Robert became that he destroyed all remaining samples to make sure no one else could get it. Sentry's power is so overwhelming that some heroes consider him the most powerful being on Earth. Mr. Fantastic even called him an Omega-level threat, and Emma Frost once described him as godlike. His strength rivals the Hulk's, but the full extent of his powers depends heavily on his mental state. At one point, he even manipulated molecules and defeated Molecule Man. Not to mention the fact that Sentry is immortal and is unable to age. But despite all his incredible power, Sentry constantly fights an inner battle to keep his darker half, the Void, from being unleashed. That brings us to our second entry, the Void. At first, the Void was presented as a separate villain and Sentry's arch-nemesis, but it was later revealed that the Void is actually an alter ego of Robert Reynolds, a dark manifestation of all his negative aspects. During Sentry's time as an active superhero, the Void went on a global rampage, nearly killing Sentry's sidekick, the Scout, pushing the Hulk into a destructive frenzy, and even taking the lives of 1,000,000 people in New York. Eventually, Robert learned the terrifying truth. The Sentry and the Void are two sides of the same coin. In response, he came up with a drastic plan. With help from both Doctor Strange and Reed Richards, they erased all memory of both Sentry and the Void from the minds of everyone on Earth, including Robert himself. And as long as Sentry remained forgotten and dormant, so did the Void. But years later, during the events of the Sentry solo series, the world began to remember the forgotten hero. And with that, the Void returned once again, unleashing chaos across the globe. It's been suggested that the Void is a separate, dark entity that bonded with Robert after he took the serum, but it's also been interpreted as something born from Robert's schizophrenia and deep mental struggles, triggered by serum's effects. Whatever the case, the Void is more than just a villain. It's a living force of destruction. It sometimes takes human form, mostly to mock or torment Sentry, but it behaves more like a force of nature than a person. The Void has nearly all of Sentry's abilities, meaning it's absurdly powerful. It's strong enough to overpower the Hulk and even kill heavyweights like Loki. It's also completely immune to harm and is believed to be unkillable as long as Sentry himself is alive. The Void's destructive power is so immense that it's been said he could destroy the entire universe on his own. That's why Sentry's greatest fight has never been with another hero or villain. It's the constant war within himself to keep the Void locked away. This vulnerability was exploited by Norman Osborn, who, after becoming the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., manipulated Sentry into joining the Dark Avengers. Sentry played a key role during the Siege storyline, during which Osborn invaded Asgard and used Sentry's power to destroy it. When Thor confronted him in battle, the Void emerged and fought against the Avengers. After the fight, Sentry reverted back to Robert Reynolds and begged Thor to kill him, but the hero refused, causing Robert to lose control and unleash the Void once again. This time, Thor was left with no other option and dragged the Void toward the sun, seemingly killing him. The Horseman of Death. Following Sentry's supposed death at the hands of Thor, he was brought back to life by the Apocalypse twins using life seeds and death seeds, two ancient artifacts created by the Celestials. After his resurrection, Sentry's appearance changed drastically. His golden glow was replaced by a blue hue. His eyes turned red and his hair became pale white. Perhaps the most unsettling part of his new look was that he could remove parts of his face, revealing his brain and other inner workings. Soon after returning, he attacked Thor, his former killer, saying that Thor should have finished the job more completely. The two engaged in a cosmic-level battle that moved so fast it surpassed the speed of light, eventually taking them to a distant planet. This version of Sentry didn't seem to be limited by his mental state and was able to tap into his full potential. During the fight, he had the upper hand, landing blows so powerful they were felt across the entire planet. Sentry even claimed that the Void was no longer within him, that now there was only death, and that Thor had cleansed him and made him perfect. It became clear that this version of Sentry was mad. He believed himself to be the true heir to Apocalypse. At one point, he even stopped Thor's hammer mid-flight using some kind of telepathy and managed to subdue the God of Thunder. Yet, instead of killing him, Sentry spared Thor, saying that a mysterious voice in his fractured mind urged him to keep Thor alive, despite his orders. Surprisingly, just a few issues later, Sentry changed sides and ended up fighting with Thor. When Earth was attacked by a Celestial, Sentry, despite his madness, still considered himself a protector of humanity and decided to help the Avengers. After the battle, he said he enjoyed helping them and took it upon himself to carry the Celestial's corpse far away from Earth, disappearing into space. The Horseman of Death may be Sentry's most terrifying form. He possessed near total control over his powers, defeated Thor without much effort, and was openly unstable and malevolent. Afterwards, Sentry wandered among the stars, searching for a way to die. Eventually, Doctor Strange found him. Rob begged Strange to kill him, but the Sorcerer Supreme didn't know how. Instead, Strange helped him find peace by locking him inside his own mindscape, freeing him from Apocalypse's influence in the process. The Merged Sentry. Let's continue our list with what might be Sentry's most powerful form yet, the Merged Sentry. This version combines the power of both the Void and the Sentry, turning him into what could be one of the most powerful beings in the entire universe. He's so strong that when he meditated, reality crumbled around him, engulfing an entire town in a field of unstable energy that attacked anyone who tried to enter. In this empowered state, he effortlessly fought and defeated Scout, his former sidekick, who had taken the Sentry serum in an attempt to replace Robert out of spite and jealousy. At first, they were evenly matched, but once Sentry fully merged with the Void, Scout didn't stand a chance and was easily defeated. Shortly after, Sentry had a brief confrontation with the Avengers, but once they realized they were powerless against him, they allowed him to leave peacefully. This version of the character appeared in the 2018 Sentry solo series. In that story, Robert used a special device called the Confluctor to access a pocket dimension that Doctor Strange had created for him, a place where he could be the Sentry without unleashing the Void into the real world. However, he had to use the Confluctor every 24 hours to keep the Void contained. When Scout teamed up with one of Sentry's old enemies and stole the Confluctor, it cut off Robert's access to the pocket world and risked releasing the Void. In response, Robert transformed into the Sentry in the real world to confront his former sidekick. During their battle, the Void was finally unleashed, but instead of fighting it off, Robert accepted it, merging with the Void and transforming into an absurdly powerful being. This version of Sentry came with a new look. Instead of his usual gold costume and blonde hair, the merged Sentry wore black and red, and his hair turned black, reflecting the Void's influence. Although it was an intriguing evolution of the character, it didn't last long. During Null's invasion of Earth, the King in Black ripped Sentry in half, killing both him and the Void. Interestingly, in that comic, Sentry was shown wearing his classic gold look, which was later acknowledged as a continuity error. The Silver Surfer Sentry. Although it only lasted briefly and didn't have a major impact on the overall story, this version of Robert Reynolds is still worth mentioning. It appeared during the Annihilation Scourge storyline, in which Reed Richards attempted to cure Sentry of the Void. Realizing that doing so would break the fundamental laws of the universe, Reed decided to conduct the experiment in the negative zone, where those laws don't apply. However, the plan backfired. Sentry was separated from the Void, which meant the Void was now free to wreak havoc across the negative zone. A powerless Robert Reynolds was found by the Silver Surfer, who, recognizing that only Robert had the knowledge to stop the Void, decided to merge with him. Now wielding the power of the Silver Surfer, Robert set out to save the negative universe. In the end, Robert arrived at the battlefield and merged with the Void once more, transforming back into the merged Sentry, Revenant Prime. After Sentry's death, his corpse was discovered by an evil organization known as the Blasphemy Cartel, who used dark magic to revive dead superheroes. One of the heroes they brought back was Sentry, who became their most powerful warrior. Revenant Prime served as a vessel for 100 million insane ghosts, which granted him overwhelming magical power. In just minutes, he defeated Clea, who was Earth's Sorcerer Supreme at the time, as well as Doctor Strange, who had become Death's Sorcerer Supreme. It wasn't until Clea and Strange merged into a powerful new being that they were able to match Revenant Prime and eventually break the spell binding him. The battle caused a massive explosion that wiped out the surrounding area. What makes this version of Sentry stand out is that his power were seemingly magic-based, rather than coming from the super serum like in previous versions. He was so terrifyingly powerful that Clea referred to him as the God of Demons. Following Revenant's defeat, one of the surviving agents of the Blasphemy Cartel managed to escape but was left in critical condition. After making it to New York, the agent unleashed a blast that struck 6 random bystanders, transferring Sentry's power to them, which leads us to our final entry, Ryan Sentry and Solarus. Ryan Topper was one of the 6 people who inherited Sentry's power, but unlike his predecessor, he didn't try to use his abilities for good. Realizing there were others like him, Ryan began hunting them down, absorbing their powers one by one. His first target was Farhad Anand, a delivery driver whose energy Ryan sensed shortly after the powers were transferred. After a short while, Ryan killed Farhad and took his power. Next, he discovered Mallory Gibbs, a woman with cerebral palsy, who had accidentally destroyed a building when her powers first manifested. Fearing what she might do, Mallory fled to the moon to avoid hurting anyone. Ryan tracked her down and sought to kill her, but had a change of heart. He found himself strangely fond of Mallory and chose to spare her, at least for the time being. Ryan continued his rampage, killing the remaining inheritors one by one. However, with each person he absorbed, he also took in fragments of their psyche, and soon began hearing their voices inside his head. Those events attracted the attention of Jessica Jones and Misty Knight, who began investigating and eventually uncovered Ryan's identity. Meanwhile, Mallory left the moon and tried to use her powers for good. Her first heroic act was rescuing a sinking boat in the Mediterranean, which she completed successfully. But her second mission didn't go as smoothly. During a flood rescue, one of her spasms caused her to accidentally destroy part of a house. Shaken by the incident, she began to fear her powers again. Back on Earth, Ryan revealed himself to the Avengers, calling himself Ryan Sentry. But the team was wary. When Scarlet Witch attempted to use magic to uncover his past, Ryan lashed out, warning her never to use magic on him. Captain Marvel, aware he was being hunted by the government, tried to question him, but Ryan fled at such speed that even she couldn't keep up. Mallory was later found by Jessica Jones, who reassured her that mistakes are part of being a hero, and encouraged her to keep trying. Their conversation was interrupted by Ryan, who ambushed them in a final attempt to claim the last Sentry power. Now visibly deranged, Ryan struggled to maintain control as the voices in his head grew louder. During the battle, Jessica and Mallory held him off long enough for the spirits of Ryan's absorbed victims to reach out to Mallory. Working together, they tricked Ryan into getting close enough for Mallory to absorb the spirits and temporarily give them form. United, they overpowered Ryan and drained all of his stolen energy into Mallory before vanishing for good. Now powerless, Ryan was arrested. Mallory, despite her role in the destruction during the fight, turned herself in, but was assured she wouldn't face prison. Instead, she would be trained to control her abilities. Fully embracing her powers and purpose, she adopted a new superhero name, Solarus. Under Misty Knight's guidance, Mallory set out to carry on the Sentry's complicated legacy.